Imagine I handed you like a single standard size bucket of flat, dull gray paint.
Okay, gray paint, got it.
Yeah, just gray. And then I looked you straight in the eye and said, I need you to use only this bucket to paint a vibrant, emotional, multi-layered masterpiece.
I mean, that sounds completely impossible.
Right. It sounds ridiculous. Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are looking at the sonic equivalent of that exact challenge.
I'm your resident audio expert.
Yeah.
And yeah, our mission today is to explore a creative experiment that, honestly, it sounds like a prank at first glance.
It totally does. We're talking about building a complete, streaming-ready, 8-minute electronic music track using absolutely nothing but white noise.
Which is wild.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our source material today comes from an independent label called 786 Music. Specifically, it's this super advanced 45-minute production session they put out called the White Noise Chronicles.
And I think to really appreciate the magnitude of what 786 Music is doing here, we kind of have to look past the surface level novelty of it.
Yeah, it's not just a clickbait thing.
Exactly. This is not some technical gimmick engineered to go viral on TikTok or rack up views. It is a really profound exploration of how extreme limitations can unlock genuine creative mastery.
Right.
What they've documented in this session is basically a masterclass in composition, advanced synthesis, and honestly, even Eastern philosophy, all operating under the guise of a standard music production tutorial.
Yeah, and that philosophical angle is where this whole thing really gets its legs for me.
Yeah.
Because before they even open a synthesizer or, dial in a tempo, they spend actual time establishing the mindset required to even attempt this.
They do, yeah.
They introduce this Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. Now, for anyone who hasn't encountered this idea, wabi-sabi is essentially the practice of finding beauty in imperfection.
Which is such a cool way to approach music.
It is. It's this aesthetic and worldview that fully embraces the incomplete, the transient, and the flawed.
And that provides the ultimate framework for this project, especially if you think about what white noise actually is. I mean, if you look at the physics of it, white noise is, by definition, imperfect.
Right. It's literally just static.
Exactly. It is the epitome of sonic chaos. It completely lacks any inherent order or structure or musicality. It is just a raw, unorganized blast of every single audible frequency happening all at once.
It's just a wall of hiss.
Yeah. So the producer's entire job in this session, like their sole purpose, is to impose order, groove, and tension onto that absolute chaos through the meticulous craft of filtering and shaping.
And the underlying philosophy they're pushing there is that the music doesn't actually come from the synthesizer or the software at all.
No, not at all.
The music comes purely from the decisions the producer makes. By embracing an extreme limitation so completely, it ceases to be a limitation and actually becomes the primary creative engine.
It forces you to be creative.
Exactly. But I know exactly what you're thinking as you listen to this, because it's the very first question I had. Wait, if it's literally just chaotic hissing noise, won't the final product just sound like, an old CRT television stuck on a dead channel?
Yeah, just that awful, harsh static sound.
Right. How do you even begin to find a musical heartbeat in a relentless wall of static?
Well, what's fascinating here is the heartbeat isn't found. It is carved out by brute force.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Yeah, you do not just listen to the static hoping to hear a rhythm organically emerge. You mathematically command the static to become a rhythm. And if that wabi-sabi philosophy is our blueprint for the project, then the physical construction of that heartbeat has to begin with the most crucial element in any electronic track.
The kick drum.
Exactly. We have to literally build a kick drum out of that static.
So they open up Logic Pro 12, they set the tempo to a steady 124 beats per minute, which is right in that perfect deep tech house pocket.
Yeah.
And they just begin constructing the foundation.
And it's not simple either.
No, they don't just use one sound for the kick drum, they build it using 3 highly specific layers. So layer A is what they call the body.
The low end way.
Right. They use a synth called the ES2, starting with a basic sine wave pitched way, way down, like -12 semitones. But then they program this super fast, high-pitched transient drop right at the very beginning of the note.
That's what gives it the punch.
Exactly. It creates that classic physical thud that you actually feel in your chest.
And a chest thump is vital, obviously, but a kick drum also needs to cut through a really dense mix of other sounds. I mean,
Yeah.
A low-end thud will get completely lost on a phone speaker or in a crowded club.
Yeah, it just turns to mud.
Exactly. So that's where layer B comes in. They take pure white noise, but they apply a heavy high-pass filter to it completely deleting every single frequency below 1500 hertz.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they tighten the volume envelope so it's incredibly short. We're talking just a microscopic 20 millisecond burst of high-end static.
It's a tiny little click. And I love the explanation for why they do this. It's essentially a psychoacoustic trick, right?
Yeah, that is the core mechanism at play. That 20 millisecond burst of high-frequency noise creates a really sharp, aggressive click.
Right.
So your brain hears that high-pitched click, and it tells your ear exactly when the drum is hitting, which then allows your auditory system to follow the low-end thud of layer A. You're basically tricking the listener's brain into perceiving a massive, unified drum strike.
That is so clever. And then there's layer C, which they call the subnoise. This is, again, more white noise, but this time they send it through a low-pass filter at 200 hertz, cutting out all the highs.
To give it that grit.
Exactly. It adds this gritty, physical weight to the drum. You almost feel the friction of it more than you hear a distinct tone. So they take all three of these incredibly different layers, group them together, and compress them heavily at a 4-to-1 ratio.
Just to mash them all into one sound.
Right. Then they run the whole group through a vintage VU compressor just to glue it all together with some analog-style warmth.
And we are still only talking about the kick drum.
I know.
They apply similar really aggressive filtering techniques to sculpt the rest of the percussion from scratch, too. I mean, they use high-pass filters on noise to isolate snappy, cracking snares.
Yeah.
They dial in extremely short decay times on filtered noise to fashion tight, closed hi-hats. They even use velocity-modulated bandpass filters to create the organic, shifting rattle of a shaker.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because the way they describe this process is so vivid.
Oh, the marble analogy.
Yes. Using filters on pure noise to isolate a specific drum hit is exactly like taking a massive, formless block of marble and aggressively chiseling away every single piece of stone that isn't the kick drum.
That's a perfect way to visualize it.
You are literally subtracting the chaos until only the rhythm remains.
It really is a process of revelation through subtraction.
Okay.
But, subtracting the chaos to reveal the rhythm only solves half of the equation.
Right, because rhythm is just percussion.
Exactly. Rhythm is physical. It dictates the movement of the body. But a compelling piece of music also requires emotion. It needs harmony. It needs melody.
Which brings us to a seemingly impossible hurdle. I mean, we have the physical thud and the groove locked in. But how on earth do you pull delicate, emotional melodies and rich, evolving harmonies out of a source material that technically possesses no pitch whatsoever?
Well, they call this phase of the session conjuring ghosts, which might honestly be the most accurate description possible for the synthesis techniques they employ here.
It's so spooky and cool.
Yeah. To create the harmonic texture of the track, they build something called a noise pad. They load up the Alchemy synthesizer, generate that raw spectral white noise, and then they route it through 4 parallel bandpass filters.
Let's break down what that actually means for a second. A bandpass filter is like a highly specific window that only lets a very narrow slice of sound pass through while blocking everything else. So they tune these 4 windows to exact mathematical frequencies: 220 hertz, 261 hertz, 330 hertz, and 392 hertz. And for the music theory nerds out there, those are the exact fundamental frequencies of an A minor 7th chord.
Exactly. So the noise is constantly rushing through these 4 microscopic frequency windows, ringing with resonance, and it creates these ghost tones.
Yeah, it's not like a normal piano.
No, it isn't a clean, pure synthesizer chord at all. It is a tonally suggestive, harmonically ambiguous chord made entirely of breathy, rushing static.
Which sounds amazing.
It does. And furthermore, they utilize MIDI key tracking. This means wherever the producer plays on the keyboard, those 4 filter windows shift up and down in perfect mathematical proportion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are playing actual moving chord progressions using literally nothing but filtered air.
Okay, I have to stop you here because this absolutely blew my mind when I was reviewing the notes, and I need to make sure I'm wrapping my head around the physics of this.
Sure, go for it.
If you are just putting frequency windows over a blast of static to get an A minor 7th chord, are you actually creating those notes, or were those exact notes always hiding inside the white noise, just waiting to be isolated?
Oh, man. This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of sound itself.
Right.
Think back to our definition of white noise. It is an equal representation of all frequencies across the entire spectrum of human hearing, playing simultaneously. So to answer your question, yes, those notes were already there.
That is so wild to think about.
It is. Every single note, every chord progression, every symphony ever written is technically already playing infinitely inside a blast of white noise. You aren't generating the A minor 7th chord. You are merely silencing the billions of other frequencies that aren't the A minor 7th chord.
It's like staring into a blinding blizzard and realizing every single color of the rainbow is swirling around in there if you just had the precise pair of glasses to filter them out.
That's exactly it.
And they push this concept to the absolute limit. They create a bass texture by using a single, incredibly narrow bandpass filter set way down at 55 hertz, which is a low A.
Yeah, you really feel that one.
Yeah, it creates this resonant, organic drone occupying the 40 to 120 hertz range. It breathes and shifts in a way a normal, mathematically perfect sine wave bass just never could.
And then they move to the resonant lead, which honestly represents the most advanced synthesis technique in the entire 45-minute session.
This part was super technical.
It is. They return to the ES2 synth, but they turn all the primary sound oscillators completely off. Instead, they push a bandpass filter's resonance parameter all the way to 100%. When pushed to that extreme, the filter begins to self-oscillate.
Okay, so wait. I understand that you're isolating a frequency, but mathematically, how does a filter, which is literally a tool designed specifically to remove sound, suddenly start generating its own pure tone? Aren't we supposed to be subtracting sound, not adding it?
It is entirely counterintuitive until you look at the circuitry, or in this case, the digital modeling of the circuitry.
Okay.
When you crank resonance to maximum, you are taking the exact frequency at the cutoff point and feeding it back into the filter loop over and over again.
Oh, like holding a microphone up to a speaker?
Exactly. It creates a feedback loop so intense that the filter circuit essentially panics and begins generating a pure sine wave at that exact frequency.
That is crazy.
And they feed it just 10% white noise, barely a whisper of static, just to excite the filter into singing. Then they add a subtle 4 hertz vibrato so the pitch wobbles slightly, giving it this fragile, human quality.
It is just brilliant engineering. So at this point, we have all 12 tracks carved out of the static. We have the booming kick, the ghostly minor chords, the screaming self-oscillating leads.
We have a full band.
Right. But if you play 12 tracks of dense, filtered white noise at the exact same time, doesn't it just turn right back into a giant, muddy wall of static? How do they give these sounds room to breathe so they actually sound like a song and not like a jet engine taking off?
Well, you hit on the exact problem of frequency masking. Raw materials alone do not make a song. They have to be organized over time. This is where the architecture of the arrangement really takes over.
The arrangement is huge.
Yeah, we're looking at an 8-minute journey here. 136 bars flowing purposefully through intros, builds, massive draughts, and deep breakdowns. And the emotional arc of that arrangement is driven almost entirely by automation.
The automation is so meticulous. During the build-ups, they use an 8-bar filter sweep to slowly open up the high frequencies, just cranking up the tension before the drop.
It creates so much anticipation.
And over the course of the entire 8-minute track, the high-pass filter on that a minor 7th noise pad is slowly, almost imperceptibly rising from 40 hertz all the way up to 300 hertz. The track literally gets brighter, more elevated, and more tense the longer you listen to it.
Yeah, and then during the breakdowns, they wash everything in massive reverbs to create a feeling of vast, empty depth before slamming the beat back in.
Which brings us to the final polish on the master bus. This processing is non-negotiable for modern streaming platforms. They use Logic's multipressor as the first stage of mastering.
Which is a very specific choice.
Wait, yeah, if the ultimate goal is just to make the track loud and balanced for Spotify, why use a multipressor specifically? I know standard compressors just turn down the loudest parts of an audio signal, so why the extra complication here?
It's mostly because of the erratic nature of the source material. White noise has unpredictable peaks across the entire frequency spectrum.
Oh.
So if a rogue high-frequency burst triggers a standard compressor, it will squash the volume of the entire track, including the low-end kick drum, causing the song to pump really unnaturally.
Which sounds terrible.
Right. A multipressor splits the audio into separate frequency bands. It allows the producer to gently squeeze only the specific frequency ranges that get too loud, keeping the track breathing naturally while still controlling the chaos.
That makes perfect sense. Then they follow that with an adaptive limiter with a strict ceiling of minus 0.3 decibels true peak, aiming for a precise minus 10 LUFS streaming loudness target.
Standard mastering specs.
Yeah, but the technical metrics, the LUFS, the true peaks, none of that is the actual goal here. The ultimate goal of all this mastering, all this math, is that the technique itself must completely disappear into the music.
Exactly. When a listener presses play, They should feel the physical groove. They should feel the emotional tension of the chords. They should never once realize they are listening to raw, manipulated noise oscillators. The illusion must be flawless.
Which is the ultimate irony of this whole project, if you think about it. You do all this intense math, all this frequency shaping, all this automation, just to make sure the audience never realizes how hard you worked.
Very much.
But if the goal is for the technique to completely vanish, why go through all this trouble? Why not just drag and drop a pre-made drum loop and a synth preset and save yourself 40 hours of work?
Well, that shifts our conversation from the technical how of music production to the strategic why of the music business in our current landscape.
The business side of it, right?
Yeah, this isn't just an academic challenge about how to make a tech house track. It is fundamentally about the survival and the identity of the 786 music label itself.
The context of the year 2026 is everything here. Because, the barrier to entry for making electronic music has dropped to absolute zero.
Anyone can do it.
Literally anyone can boot up an AI generation tool, type in a prompt, or buy a pack of pre-made loops, arrange them in a timeline, and have a track uploaded to Apple Music by Friday afternoon. The market is completely flooded with competent, but ultimately hollow music.
Exactly. So what does a 45-minute deep dive into white noise mean for an independent label facing that level of market saturation?
It's a statement.
Yes. It serves as 786 Music's public documentation of their production philosophy. It is undeniable, audible proof of earned, applied knowledge. An algorithm can generate a passable tech house song, but an algorithm cannot document the intentionality, the philosophy, and the deep understanding of frequency sculpting that we've just discussed.
It's proof of work, and it's highly scalable knowledge, too. The deep techniques they're showcasing aren't just parlor tricks for this one specific genre.
Oh, definitely not.
If you know the physics behind building a perfect filter sweep from white noise, you can apply that to Afro House. If you know how to command a filter to self-oscillate for a resonant lead synth, you can use that in trance or French house or ambient music. The tools scale across everything you touch.
And the label actually offers two profound statements in this session that serve as their ultimate takeaways. The first is, if you hear differently, you produce differently.
I love that.
By forcing yourself to understand the chaos of white noise, your ear becomes hyper-attuned to the microscopic details of sound. And the second statement, which basically serves as their entire operating motto, is the vibe is the only rule.
So what does this all mean? To me, it means they're treating their actual process as their brand legacy. The method itself is the message.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
They are standing up and saying, we don't just assemble music from convenient prepackaged pieces. We understand sound down to the atomic level. And that deep comprehension is why our tracks fundamentally feel different than the AI-generated flood.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about how this applies far beyond just music production.
Oh, totally.
In an era where artificial intelligence and automation are commoditizing so many technical skills, whether it's writing, coding, or graphic design, what is your unautomatable legacy?
That's the real question.
786 Music proves that deep foundational knowledge combined with a unique human philosophy creates an output that retains an undeniable fingerprint. It's about mastering the constraints of your chosen medium so thoroughly that your expertise becomes your signature.
I think that's an incredibly powerful framework. We've gone on quite the journey today. We started with a single chaotic hiss of silence-breaking static, our single bucket of gray paint.
Just a wall of noise.
And we watched step by step as it was filtered, compressed, automated, and sculpted into a fully mastered, streaming-ready 8-minute musical masterpiece. It really drives home the idea that true mastery rarely comes from having unlimited options. It comes from embracing absolute extreme constraints.
It is the philosophy of wabi-sabi in its purest application. Taking the imperfect, the chaotic, the seemingly useless noise, and finding the profound beauty hidden within it by applying deep intention and discipline.
And while you might not be firing up Logic Pro 12 tonight to synthesize a kick drum out of raw static, that philosophy of wabi-sabi, of embracing constraints, applies to whatever it is you are building in your own life.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. If a complete, emotional, and beautiful musical art can be carved out of literal chaotic noise, what noise in your own life, your career, or your daily routine are you currently trying to mute, when you could instead be filtering it into your greatest asset?